So this is the start of my new sword build, my attempt at doing a ninja toe, but if it warps in heat treat, I'll call it a katana. Or reverse bladed katana, depending on which direction it warps in. Right. Now, I've taken an actual katana and marked out the curvature for the tip. That end and the tip, for those of you who do not have a katana to work from, it is about 2.2 centimeters, 0.3, so 2.3 centimeters. For those of you who do not have a katana to work from. Down at the tip, going to, where are we on the camera? Yeah, going to about 3.3 down near the the copper bit. I know, I don't know the proper Japanese term for it. I think I might just do a cheat version. Like a really dodgy, easy DIY sword, so I'm probably will leave doing that out unless I feel like being extra fancy. So I've measured it, it's 29 inches full length, so I'll trace that out onto my bar of steel. This is just a leaf spring, like out of a car or something. And, you know, traced it out. There is that taper to it. And, yeah, one error is it's just a hair too thin there, so I might have to squish that out with, you know, just forging it, you know, get it red hot, hammer it down to widen that section out. But once it got to the maximum thickness, I then just continued it along that same length. Just because we're going to squish the remaining material down into a tang. So that's my lay profile, and I'm going to cut it out with an angle grinder with a cut-off disc. Now, a tip for measuring a straight line on a spring: use a ruler. You can use another spring off of the same spring set. Now, basically the exact same curvature, or at least very close to it, and it's solid and it's straight, makes a decent ruler. Yeah, just a quick little cheat. Very easy. So yep, now I'll cut that out with the angle grinder, then I've got to take it to the forge and straighten it out. It's just that simple, straighten it out. Put in the coals. Make sure the coals are over it to help insulate it, but leave a little hole so I can still see the steel, so I can tell when it's at critical, not critical, well, I can tell it's at the right colour. Once it's the right colour, move over, hammer it lightly just to straighten it. I'm getting it to an orange colour. It's not complicated. Okay, so I've made a slight error with my choice of stock. The thickness of this Cali spring is only 6mm thick. I just checked the thickest part of my, well, one of my katanas. It was 7mm thick. That's the one we're using for an example, so oops. But yeah, it took me an hour and a half to straighten this out, which is longer than I thought it would. Yeah, I've got a pretty small setup. I think it's about time I upgrade my forge. Because if I could have heated this whole thing up, it would have been done in one heat. In fact, I have straightened warp blades longer than this in one heat when I've been able to heat the whole thing up. would have been faster if I had a larger setup and a longer hot section. So I could really only heat up sections about that wide at a time. I had to go back a few times to make sure it was straight. I've squished out that divot to give us enough material all the way along. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distal taper it. So I've marked off where the end of the blade is, halfway, and well, don't really need one down the tip. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a grinder with a metal grinding wheel. Important that you use the proper one. If you don't use a proper grinding wheel for metal, it will take forever. And I let this cool down nice and slow so that it would be annealed and nice and soft to grind. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind down to about 4 mil there, because the end section of my katana was slightly over 4 mil thick, so I'm going to go to 4 mil there, 5 mil there, and taper it down. I should probably get my electronic calipers out and divide it up into quarters just to be a bit more even, but my batteries for my electronic calipers are dead. Decisions. Okay. I'll see how I go with just bringing it with the grinder for beveling. Not beveling, I'm not beveling it yet. I'm just going to try and profile it down and we'll see how I can go with it. Alright, so you probably don't need this explained here again, but yeah, pretty basic. Just one little tip I've been told: if you want to keep it nice and level, you want to grind with the grinder level. If you go in an angle up and down, you can end up making thin spots, so it will be a bit less even, but yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so first section took about half an hour and 40 minutes. The rest of it took about an hour, so we're looking at maybe an hour and a half grinding with just the normal grinder to get to this point. I need to refine the tips geometry. I want to go a bit of a sharper geometry than the katana I'm using as an example, though the geometry I'm giving it is also found on katanas, and the very tip of Japanese swords isn't always identical. There seems to be a bit of a variation in styles. So I'll trace out the curvature I want and grind it up. That's so that they'll be right for beveling. So what I want for my tip is something more like this sword here. Instead of drawing it freehand, I've got some knives that I kind of like the curvature of to use as just to try and give me an idea of what it should look like. I think I'll go with the Mora. Just using my Mora as a bit of a template. Take out the pen. I need the pens. Okay, yep, that one's dead. So I'll just take that out with the grinder. That did not take long. Just about 10 minutes to give it a rough polish to make sure it wasn't really warped. Took it over on the anvil and hammered it. There was a little bit of a kink in there, didn't time that. And about 10 minutes to put that tip on the end, well, the curvature for the tip. Now I'm going back to the forge, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a set down there, try and squeeze this in and draw out a tang. I really should have done that when I was straightening it out, so I wouldn't have to start the forge up again. Would have been a time saver to just do it all at once, but it was really hot and I was really tired. So yeah, gonna do that and then I'll start beveling. Okay, so to do a set down and draw out the tang, what I need to do is get it nice and hot, nice and orange, and I hold it on the edge of the anvil. Where I want, actually, nope, silly me, it needs to be the other way around. And the side that I want to squish down is on the anvil, the blade is off the anvil. And the plan is that I bring my hammer down right in line with it, above the anvil, right at the edge of the anvil, so that I can squish it down and so that it will squeeze the material down on both sides, hopefully evenly, at least that's the plan. And once that's done, I can start working and draw the rest of it out. Now if you're a bit unsure of yourself and your skills with hammer control aren't that great, what you can do is, just leave a little bit of extra material, because if your hammering's not quite perfect, it'll ding up the blade. So you can be a little bit, start off just a little bit further back and clean it up with a grinder, just to make it a bit easier for yourself. So I think I'll maybe just thin it out a little bit more than that, but I also need to thin it out in that direction, because squishing it down in this direction has widened it out in this direction. So yeah, it's gone thicker, so I'll have to thin it out that way. And yeah, once that's done, the tang should now be centered in the blade. It's not off to one side, it's in the middle. And yeah, I'll just draw the rest of it out. I really need to nail that anvil down. I do keep this piece of steel because it's got a nice hole in it, so I can manipulate it with my fire rake. But yeah, I use that to weigh down the piece so it doesn't fall out of the forge. Okay, I straightened it up a little bit more, a slight forward kink in it. I don't mind if it's got a slight backwards curve in it, but I prefer it to not have a slight forwards curve. Yeah, so that took me about 50 minutes, including heating up there and straightening it out. So yeah, not a very long process, but I'll leave this to cool down so it will be nice and annealed, and go inside. Got a thunderstorm. Well, yeah, we got a thunderstorm coming in.